My name is Delia, and I've just recently finished the contract for digitalising the bird banding schedules. So I thought I'd talk you through the process of migrating these schedules into the BioWeb database that Shelley's been talking about. So all in all, there were about 1.3 million records. They were in a series of paper folders. We had about 155 paper folders, and we captured those into various Excel spreadsheets. And then we transferred that data, or we integrated that data into a bird banding interim database. And from here, an editing screen was developed, so we could actually cleanse some of that data and query it a bit further before we migrated into the BioWeb database. Then we migrated it into the BioWeb database, and a SQL Server reporting model was developed, so we were able to query even further and drill down deeper into some of the possible errors that would be in a large data set like this. And we're able to do quite a series of bulk updates. The main errors we found were to do with invalid dates. There wasn't any data validation for a day or a month, so we had to deal with a lot of that, or they just had 00 for all parts of the actual date. And also a lot of the location, the latitudes and longitudes, they were either null or they weren't actually on the map of where they were meant to be. And we had one in particular that there must have been some rule, anything with the Chatham Islands, because the date line, instead of being a longitude of 176, it was like 376. So there were rules that were already in place that we weren't actually aware of, because it was quite an old system, that we had to find out as we went along, and we just corrected things as we became aware of them. And we also found that there was some duplication of the banding data into the BioWeb database, so we got rid of those duplicates as well. We found that we could also actually find out some of the errors that were on the paper schedules, which is just human error, which can be hard to pick up at times, and that was to do with the bird banding operators, but perhaps banding a species that had a species code that was quite similar. Like if we had red-billed gulls and they were also banding black-billed gulls, it was only a difference of one number in the species code. And so they actually incorrectly put that into the paper schedule, and we were able to pick up that type of error. And we found that sometimes there were patterns of that with certain banding operators, so they were able to go back and check their data, and then that just, was good overall, really, just for them being cautious of when they do fill out their schedules, because they're obviously the main data capture people at the start of the process. And before we migrated the banding data into the database, the recovery data was already in there, so it was existing. So it was the first time that we actually had the banding and the recovery data in the same place, and we realised that there were particular links that should be in place. And for those of you that aren't sure, recovery is just a record of any bird that's been banded, whether it's dead or alive. And so one thing that we found was there wasn't a link between the species codes. You might have a bird that was initially banded as a house sparrow, and then 4 years later it was recovered as a royal albatross or something like that, which isn't possible to use. So we put that data validation in to prevent that happening again, and we were able to update the incorrect data that was there. And another important thing we were able to do was link some of the bands, because birds can have a series of bands, especially some of the longer-lived birds, and also the actual quality of the bands were made out of different materials earlier on, so the numbers used to wear out. So you might have a bird that's got an albatross that's got 5 or 6 bands on it, and you might find that we found that like these two might have been linked and they might have been linked, but there wasn't a link for this one for the previous and next. So we were actually missing like 10 or 20 years data sometimes, due to the age of the bird. So we're able to put that process in place, and we're still kind of dealing with that, but we understand the theory behind what we need to do now. And that means, we can have greater accuracy and longevity and survival information in general. So we've been able to significantly reduce the error rate in this data set, and the bird banding database is definitely more functional, and we've learned a lot more about it and gone into a lot more detail than what we expected. But that's a good thing. We kind of understand what we do need now, and also that should help us when we do eventually migrate this into the NIMS database. And what we are able to do now is we're able to report on this data, so we're able to do reports on longevity, survival, migration paths. We've got calculations, from where it was first abandoned to where it was last recovered, and we can also do calculations for different layers of the journey and the direction that it travelled in as well. And we'll be able to provide data on breeding locations, particular species of birds, which is all useful information to have, which we haven't been able to do that overall generally for just New Zealand birds really. And another thing we got out of this project was we were able to determine what the experience was of the people that are actually banding the birds, and that's been quite useful. And now systems being put in, or being developed where we're going to be able to increase the actual quality of the banding of the birds, because we know the people that have got the experience of various ways you can band, we're doing different types of bands, and then they'll band the up and coming banders, and we'll just generally increase the actual quality of the banding as well as the collecting of the data, so we want to make that consistent as well. And so all this generic data will be available to the public. There will be some intellectual property agreements for some blocks of data, and that's just more for reasons of people are still collecting their data, they haven't actually finished their project, if they want to be able to publish their data before it goes out to the public forum. And also this data isn't just DOC data, it's other agencies like regional councils, Ornithological Society, universities. And if you are wanting to, if there is data that is restricted but you're still kind of wanting to put your hands on in some way, there's a process through the banding liaison commission that you can follow, and that will give you reasons why or why not you can get data. So it's taken us about 3.5 years to do this project, and we can kind of take a couple of minutes to do some of these reports now, whereas in the past it would be like a couple of days or a couple of weeks kind of going through the paper files. And we do actually currently provide recovery reports for people with someone a public recovery about a bird in a band, and that's what Marla does, and we'll send out and we do give you information on that. It's been good. And again, it was TIFPA's funded, and so we do want to get out and share that information.
How far back to the data go?
About 1920s and 1930s. Yeah, so she built up quite a knowledge of who banded what, some of the historical data was really interesting.
And new data, when bands are sent out, is there a requirement that any information has to go back into this?
As part of the banding permit agreement is that we need to get banding schedules and information back from you, otherwise your permit won't be renewed. And then there will be a system in place, because we're always collecting data, and we can then migrate back, later data into the database at a certain time. Yeah.